What is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Sunday evening with my guy Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. I am excited to talk about this group, and I tried so hard to get as many corners as I could graded, and yet it feels like I didn't do anything. This class goes for so long. I believe there are 15 or 16 corners in the top 100. I think 17 if you can count 101 on mock draft database's big board. I mean, this is a heck of a class. You talk about the tight ends class and how deep this tight end class is. It is, but there's like 6 tight ends. There's 7 tight ends in the top 100. There's 15 or 16 corners in this top 100. It's really, really good.
Yeah, no, I graded 15 corners. I'll probably visit a couple more, in the next couple of days here before the draft. But this group, man, I loved watching this group. I think this is the best position group in the draft. And I had heard when I was doing these interviews, right? And Connor Rogers, Matt Miller, Devin Jackson, some of these guys all said like, hey, this corner class is legitimately like awesome. And we saved it for last because it requires a certain amount of film being built up in the database that we work with. And so, you got to make sure you watch the all 22 because you can't grade cornerbacks when you're just watching on YouTube. I think you can get an understanding of how are their ball skills, like how's their tackling, but you have to watch all 22 to get a real feel for cornerback play. And so this is why we waited this long. So it's a great group, man, and I can't wait to see how this one pans out. So as we do every single show, we'll talk a little bit about maybe how we want to see the Chargers address the room, because they do need some help in the room. Obviously, Bryce Callahan, really their only key departure, but like we've talked about, Michael Davis is a free agent after the season. They have not extended him just yet. JC Jackson's health status is kind of up in the air. So kind of from a broader sense here, Tyler, how would you like to see the Chargers address the room, and maybe kind of what kind of style of corner do you think that they should be looking at in your kind of range?
Yeah, the number one complaint seemed last year was someone that was not big enough to handle the run. So now some of that is just attitude. Some of that is just your ability to tackle. I think Asante Samuel Jr. always had that attitude. He just wasn't like the most physically gifted, both in terms of athleticism and in size and height. So, I think they're going to be looking for someone who can do that. Now, if they don't, then they believe that's Jaw Taylor. That's why they brought him onto the field. That's why they kicked Asante Samuel Jr. off the field, because they felt he could bring it in the run game. And I would agree. I would agree on like the short passes, run game. That is something Jaw Taylor can contribute to. So, if I'm the Chargers, I'm looking for something like that. Depending what they would like to do. Like last year, the Chargers had JC, they had Michael Davis, and they had Asante Samuel Jr. And then Bryce Callahan was after the draft. But I wanted them to draft Martin Emerson or someone in the 3rd round. I think we talked about Alontae Taylor. I wanted someone to just kind of become that man coverage corner of the future, someone who could press and move. Both those guys were really, really athletic, both of them, or at least Alontae Taylor had ties to the team. So it's so tough to judge what they want, because if JC could be really great to end the year and he's not really cuttable next year, he is, but you save like $4 million.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't help that much.
It doesn't help a ton. So, I mean, it might for the Chargers, who are very cap strapped next year, but like you might want to go with him moving forward. Or let's say at this point, if Michael Davis doesn't have an extension, I think he's gone next year, which I think is kind of a mistake. But and then Asante Samuel Jr. I just don't know. So if I'm preparing for the kind of corner that Asante Samuel Jr. to them is not, which is not a run game contributor, it seems. Now, it's very tough to say that after the guy just had 3 interceptions the last time we saw him. Like,
yeah,
what do you take him off the field for? A couple of running downs in a pass-first league against Mahomes? Not really, but that's what they would like. So for me, if I'm trying to meet where the Chargers are at, I'm looking for a bigger body guy who can move and do all the things a corner should, but particularly is stout against the run.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is this is a really good draft to need a corner, and we'll see when exactly the Chargers feel like they need to address that. But I think for me, this is something that I've talked with about Brian Branch, and he's going to be featured in the show. I want them to get some more size, like whether that's on the outside, whether that's in the slot. Like I think they need more size and physicality, and you're kind of highlighting it in terms of like run defense, but They're gonna need some press man support too. Like I don't think that's the strength of Jaw Taylor. That's not a strength of Asante Samuel Jr. They're more kind of like zone coverage, match routes, sit back and maybe try and bait some people. And Asante can do that at a very high level. And we'll see about Jaw Taylor, but they need some size and physicality to prepare for the Michael Davis, departure potentially, as well as JC Jackson, not necessarily being, ready to rock. So I think you can work around Asante's ability or lack thereof in terms of the run game. And they did that with Jaw Taylor a little bit. So, maybe on passing downs, you can bump Asante into the slot. And, whenever you want to play some dime package, you can work around things. So I think the whole beauty of Brandon Staley's defense is it doesn't necessarily need somebody to be penciled into the slot like full time. Like I think that was the case for Bryce Callahan. But if you go back and watch some of 2021 tape, like they're moving Chris Harris around pretty heavily. And if you watch some of the Ram stuff like Darius Williams and Troy Hill, like they were kind of rotating back and forth between the slot, and then they would move Jalen Ramsey into the slot as well. So I think the type is size, physicality, but I think it can come from a different spot. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be an outside corner, it doesn't necessarily have to be a slot corner. So physicality and that flexibility, I think, is super key when you're kind of looking for potential draft targets in this class.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I've sort of looked at some of the slot guys or guys who are outside guys who could sort of move into the slot. I was thinking of it that way, but I see what you mean with like looking at guys who are, they don't have to be just like slot specific guys to play the slot. You can find other guys to mix and match, which I think I kind of thought was going to be their plan last year, but then they signed Bryce Callahan. So we never really got to see this whole plan play out.
Yeah. And like that size, I think is super important because if Michael Davis walks next year, like all of your other corners are sub 6 foot, except for Dean Leonard. Dean Leonard is obviously taller, but he was a 7th round dart throw. Like we don't really know what you're going to get with him. So, I think they need somebody above 6 foot, or at least that plays above 6 foot. So I think, a bigger corner, like we talked about last year with Martin Emerson and Alontae Taylor, although Alontae Taylor went like 42nd or something like that to the Saints last year. It was just like crazy.
Yeah, he went early.
Yeah, he went super early. So that's kind of my approach. So I guess the question here, Tyler, then next is what kind of draft range are we talking about for you? Because me and you kind of messaged back and forth, like, how does this change things? Because this is the best position group. Do you say maybe at 21, maybe at 54? Hey, you know what? Like, let's try and get somebody, one of these top tier guys in this class. And, we'll kind of work around, because tight end is deep, wide receiver is deep, running back is deep. So what kind of range are you potentially looking at?
It's so tough to judge for this one, but considering the class and considering who could be there, all I know is this: looking at these corners to a certain point, I almost wanted to throw out everything that we had thought of for how the Chargers should draft this year. I just think, like, if you are telling me that, let's say it's Banks, right? I think that's Daniel Jeremiah's like CB4 in like the 30-ish range or something. If that player is there and you're looking at him and you do feel like JC ain't going to play this year, we're trying to move on from Asante Samuel Jr., like those discussions need to happen first. Like if JC's not playing, if you want to move on from Asante Samuel Jr., then at some point you're looking at a really, really freaking good corner, like a really, really, really good one with a legit RAS profile really at 21, but also at 54 versus an outlier player at wide receiver that you and your own system aren't comfortable with, that you aren't even sure is going to translate in the NFL in general. Like I'm considering corner there. If I'm looking at, another defensive tackle, let's say Brian Brzez's there or Kalijah Kancey, let's say they want to go with that, or go after one of these corners who has a legit high 2nd round grade, who's going to be your corner for the next 4 years. You can do so many things with. Like I'm really considering corner. I don't want to throw out all the draft strategy. I don't actually mean that, but like this corner class is so good that I feel like it would almost be a mistake, almost no matter who's there in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round, to not take them at least once. And if the first, like I've only gotten to guys that I have round 3 grades on. I've graded 13 corners. So I have no idea what this looks like on day 3, but like the Chargers are going to have to take one of these corners. It would be irresponsible for them to not take one of these corners, in my opinion, at some point in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, it's almost like a feeling of like I would hate for them to miss out on this class. And every once in a while you just come across these groups, right, where there's just a ton of receiver talent, ton of running back talent, ton of tight end talent, which I think in this class is also applicable. So I think in a scenario where you're talking about like the Chargers trading down and you're looking at a board of, some of the guys, obviously, like you mentioned, Deontay Banks, maybe Emmanuel Forbes, maybe Darius Rush, Keely Ringo, like these guys, or like, and the receivers are all gone and the tight ends are all gone. It's like, do I want a corner? Or do I want like Mozzie Smith, or do I want, Drew Sanders? Like, these, just throwing out some names here. So I think it is a possibility where the Chargers trade down and they take a corner, and then you can, target all offense on day 2 with your additional top 100 pick that you're going to get in a trade down scenario. So Alex Katzen and I did like a trade up video a few months back, and it was, Alex decided that he wanted to target Joey Porter. I hadn't watched the corners at the time, and people were like, "Oh, they would never draft a corner in the first round. Like that's just not something that they're going to do." And it's like, well, I don't know if that's true or not. And now that I feel so strongly about the cornerback class, it's like this is a real possibility I think people should be preparing for in the first round.
Yeah, I would absolutely be preparing for it. And, trading up, I can't get behind, but even then I would sort of get it because you're allocating resources towards, I mean, Joey Porter Jr. is like a CB1 in a lot of classes, or a CB2 or something. I think he's like sort of a consensus, like 3 to 5 right now. And like, I would get it. I would completely get it. If the Chargers don't feel like they have the guys and one guy's going to be out for the year, I mean, you go do that. That's a huge part. Like the Chargers, yes, there's several reasons they lost that game against the Jaguars, but if they don't have Michael Davis getting hurt, they're winning that game.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like there's a corner, if you feel like there's a corner in this class who, does that for you this year, but then definitely next year when, let's say, Davis is gone and let's say you move on from JC Jackson, and then you can just maintain that consistency and excellence in the secondary with elite athletes and frankly elite prospects, in my opinion, I would get it. I would completely get it.
Yeah. And, we had this conversation. I want to say it was like in our Discord, somebody asked us, like, how would you rank like the positions in terms of priorities for Brandon Staley? And, I think cornerback has a strong argument to be first most important position in Brandon Staley's defense. If it's not first, it's probably second. And so, just with the uncertainty that is with this team, again, I don't think at 21, like outright at 21, I don't think you're taking a corner over some of these other positions. But if you trade down and you miss out on some of those other position groups that we've been talking about, maybe you miss out on Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid at that point. Like I said, the receivers are gone. Like you're going to take a corner over a defensive lineman. Like you're going to take a corner over Jahmyr Gibbs, like all this stuff. So it's just a scenario that I think is worth talking about. And then I think the other side of this too is great point by Zeus, obviously talking about Asante first, but he says, I agree though, the FOMO of this corner class is real. Could we get a corner in round 4 because the depth is so good? I think the answer to that too is yes. Like my 15th corner right now is Caillou Blue Kelly, and I'd be really happy with him in the 4th round. I think like he's got a really high 4th round grade for me. He's the only 4th round grade corner that I have. So could the cornerback group be pushed up? Yes. It could also be pushed down because teams feel like, hey, like we don't necessarily need to take, Emmanuel Forbes or Julius Brents or whoever here in the first round, because we can go get another guy on day 2 or day 3. So it's going to be very interesting. I think the depth of this class is very fantastic though. So I think that this point by Zeus is also a good one to point out.
Yeah, and he stated it perfectly with FOMO, the fear of missing out. That's exactly how I felt looking at this class, because it's like, oh man, like I know the Chargers, if all things go well, don't need a corner, but man, how do you not take one of these guys? This class is so good. I didn't tally it exactly, but I think I had like 11 or 10 corners in my top 52. So basically in the top 50 for me.
Yeah.
That ain't the case for any other position. I think edge is close, but otherwise, no. I mean, this is it's too good to pass up on one guy, and people aren't going to like it. I think our main focus for the most part has been in some order: wide receiver, tight end, and edge. I think that needs to change, and I think that needs to consider depending on the board, of course. Like I think that's the right strategy overall. But considering the board, depending on what you're seeing in the second round, third round, I think Chargers fans need to start mocking a corner to this team. That would require watching the corners and using all 22 and knowing how these guys work and play. But to me, it won't be a favorite for a lot of fans if we start mock drafting corners in round 2, round 3, round 4. But like, these guys are really, really good. And I again, fear of missing out. I would hate to miss out on one of these guys.
Yeah, and again, this is another thing that's just kind of reiterated my desire for this team to trade down, because I think there's so much good talent to be had on day 2. This is a great corner class, great tight end class, and sitting at 21, it's just kind of they're kind of in no man's land this year with that pick. So ultimately, we'll see what happens, and I'm excited to dive into this group here. So like I mentioned, this is a great corner group. I feel really bad because I can't even really hype up Clark Phillips, man. I respect anybody that has him in the top 10, but I think it's important to be real about these prospects. And so, as a Utah guy, that's how good this class is. There are too many other guys that I have in front of him. So he's unfortunately not in my top 10. We'll see what happens with your list. And then the other difference between us too is I have Brian Branch as a corner. So Brian Branch is going to be in my top 10 as well. So
yeah,
excited to dive into it. Tyler, I don't know if you have the sheet ready and able to share, but once you do, we'll get started here.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll take care of that right now. As far as Branch goes, he would be probably CB5, I think, for me. I don't think he'd be in my top 3. And then it'd be kind of a battle between 4 and 5. But that's why I kind of preferred him at safety anyway, because or at least comparing him and ranking him as a safety, because I felt like safety 1 was more, respectable and worth what he could do on the field.
Sure, I get that. Okay. So, like Tyler pointed out on Twitter, we're actually doing a full 10 and then a just missed player, because this class is just that stacked. So, Tyler graded 13, I've graded 15. It's just a great group. So, Tyler, why don't you kick us off here with your just missed, who would be your 11th corner?
Ooh, my 11th corner. Okay, this is it's crazy to even talk about him here. It's going to be DJ Turner for me, out of Michigan, who it's kind of a jockeying between him and Travius Hodges Tomlinson, who I love a lot, but it's more the precedent than anything with him.
Yeah.
But DJ Turner, he's the dude's speed personified. He can work and did work at Michigan from the slot, from the perimeter, the box, either side of the field, you name it. And he's really got that true speed to carry guys down the field. I do like him more as a man coverage corner. I do prefer watching him pattern match. He does have the athleticism to do that. In zone, I did see more issues, because even with that athleticism, some guys, even though they're athletic freaks, they are a tad behind. And some of that's processing, some of that's your ability to do other things that aren't just on the performance physical testing sheet. So, he could carry Quentin Johnson down the field, no problem. And then there was one time he ran a comeback and he was 10 yards away from him practically, because he just wasn't able to chop his feet and break it down and get back to Johnson. Again, despite being very athletic, I forget where his RAS ends up. But in terms of the speed profile, he's excellent. But there's something about the ability to work in zone and do things like that. He just isn't quite there. The processing is just a tick behind, and he's not that fluid in that sinking. But overall, very fast player, very good, I think, man coverage guy. I would consider him moving him into the slot. Not the biggest guy, 36th percentile height guy, $178 in terms of weight. So there's a concern, but he's a good mover downfield. Faced a heck of a lot of college competition and has a lot of good reps. So you just wonder about that move to the NFL.
Yeah, fastest player of the combine. I think it was 4.26 officially. So that speed profile is very, very real. I forget the player in Carolina's last name. I think it's Dante Jackson, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of reminded me of him, because there was a chance that the Chargers were interested in him back in 2021, as a trade piece. So I went and watched him. So some similar vibes there, just in terms of speed profile, but just kind of being a tick behind. So he's, again, I graded him. I like him. If the Chargers could snag him in the 3rd round, I think that'd be fantastic. So he is, let me make sure. he is number 12 for me. So he's just missed. So my 11th is going to be Tyreek Stevenson from Miami. He does have a Georgia connection as well, for those who like pointing that out. So Tyreek Stevenson, I think, size profile is fantastic. Not the fastest player in the world, but I like his ball skills. I like his ability to press. I do happen to think that he would be a great fit as a slot corner, as a big slot corner. That was like the reason why he transferred from Miami, though, or transferred from Georgia to Miami, is that Kirby Smart wanted him to play their star slot role, and he didn't want to do that. He wanted to be an outside corner. So I think there's a lot to like there in terms of a slot projection. Just like the size, physicality, his ability to match routes is really solid as well. So I have some athletic concerns, in terms of deep speed, in terms of change of direction, which is kind of a theme in this class. I think there are some players who are not necessarily super twitchy in that regard, but Tyreek Stevenson has a lot to like.
Nice. I'll have to give him a watch. One of the guys I didn't get to that I really wanted to, because on the consensus board, he's really high.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a chance to get to him. I don't think I've heard a thing about him, to be completely honest. Not that that's bad. People just focus on their guys, but yeah, I'll have to give him a watch.
Yeah. Jim Nagy said that he's higher on NFL teams' boards than he is on the media. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Tyler, you want to go through? We'll do 10 through 7, and then we'll go 6 through 4, 3 through 1. So why don't you kick us off there?
Sounds good. And yeah, guys watching and listening, 10 players this time, not 8, and I just missed. That's how good this group is. We had to do this. So for number 10 for me is Eli Ricks out of Alabama, who barely played, but I'll get to him. Then at number 9, a player I did not love as much as everybody else, Kelly Ringo from Georgia. That turned me on to watching Cedric Tillman, if you're wondering how that went. Who I love now. And then Cam Smith at number 8 from South Carolina, which is insanity for me to even consider that he's the 8th guy on my list,
right?
Which feels really mean. But actually, I have his teammate Darius Rush over him. And I was so annoyed because I was hoping for anything. Like both these guys, the difference in grade was like 0.05. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll look at, something else. Let's look at the composite rankings. And they're literally next to each other on the stats-based composite rankings too. So it's like, you're on the same team with almost the same grade, with almost the same, stats-based rankings. How do I break this up? I don't know. So I'm cool with either of them. Both of them did excellent work. I'll talk about Cam Smith, I guess. I was really impressed. One of the first things I noticed in that Tennessee game is that, and I had to go then check his numbers after this, was that they were very comfortable playing him in the slot against Jalen Hyatt, which is something that he basically didn't do that entire season. I believe the first game of the year, he played like 42 snaps in the slot. Yep. But the 5 games before he played against Tennessee, it was 6 total snaps in the slot. And then suddenly they're like, all right, go cover Jalen Hyatt. And he had to, move all over the field. It wasn't just like he just happened to be the one guy on the slot on the field corner or something. Like he was always following Jalen Hyatt wherever he went, outside, inside, you name it. And that was really, really impressive. He wasn't asked to do like a ton. The whole goal was, I don't care if you give up 10 catches for 50 yards in front of you, it just can't get behind you. And overall, like I didn't see him giving up anything to Jalen Hyatt, if I'm not mistaken. There was the touchdown given up to Cedric Tillman, who again I'm starting to really like. But that was a tough grab. That was a perfectly placed ball. So I don't know how you would have stopped that, but it was just uncoverable back shoulder throw. So as a zone corner, and especially in that game, like he's got this size, the athleticism, the quickness to make up for that cushion and break up passes. One of the more productive guys coming out with 15 passes broken up. My only concerns here, penalties and tackling compared to maybe his counterpart. 10 penalties last year, second worst of the corners. Hodges Tomlinson is the worst at 14, which is quite a bit, which is the most I've ever seen, I think. The missed tackles are definitely an issue. It's kind of it's more of a play style, I think, towards the run. But overall, it's crazy. Like Cam Smith is a second round grade for me. He's corner 8. There's nothing in this class in terms of position groups it's like that. He's really, really good, and I'd be happy, for a team to get him in the second round.
Yeah, there's been a lot of hype around Cam Smith from the jump. He's been a popular player, and so I was excited to watch him. And there's a lot to like, man. I think his just his instincts and coverage are really fantastic, and like you were mentioning, he's able to really guard a diverse profile of receivers, and I think that is something that really stands out for him. That's not the case for other players on this list who I really like too. So I'm a tick lower than you are with Cam Smith, but I still really, really like the player.
Mm-hmm.
I think that his ball skills stand out. And like I mentioned, his ability to guard multiple different types of receivers stands out. The penalties and the missed tackles are a little harder for me to get over. So again, really good player. I have him as a second round grade as well. So he's my cornerback 10.
Nice.
So again, still really like him, but
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put USC, and I know that's gonna piss some people off, but I don't feel like typing the whole thing. Number 9 for me also is Keely Ringo from Georgia.
Oh wow, okay. For some reason I thought you were gonna have him like 5th or something.
I flirted with the idea, but
Okay.
ultimately decided against it. So number 8 for me, I have Julius Brents from Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 7 is where I have Darius Rush as well. So, similar viewing there for the two of us. So I'll talk a little bit about Darius Rush, because like his background to me is really the intriguing thing. He's a tick bigger than Cam Smith, and he's a tick more athletic. I think he's certainly faster, has a higher vertical jump, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But he started his football career as a receiver. He never played corner until a couple of years ago when he made the switch at South Carolina. And when you look at his kind of background and his ability to, force receivers into mistakes, I think is something that really stands out to me. I think he's 4th in the class in forced incompletion percentage. And he just doesn't have the kind of, I don't want to say baggage, but he doesn't have the kind of bad reps that some of these other players do, like his teammate Cam Smith,
I agree.
like Tyreek Stevenson, like Ringo. And there's just a lot of upside here, because he's almost like a ball of clay. Like if you feel like you're getting one of the higher upside corners in this class, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, because he has all the physical tools. His range is outstanding. His body type's a little unorthodox for corner. He's kind of a thicker athlete. And I think there's just a lot you can do with him, because he doesn't necessarily have like, this is my type, this is my go-to trait, like this is who I am, like right now. Like there's no box that he's necessarily penciled into, because he hasn't played corner for that long. And I think there's a lot that you can work with here. And the ball skills stand out to me, obviously, as a former receiver. His ability to bait receivers into mistakes is really solid as well. So there's not a ton of production, because he hasn't played corner for a long time. But I think he's definitely somebody who will, kind of turn into a turnover machine in the NFL if he gets into the right coaching, because he's just so smart. He has those great ball skills as a former receiver. And like I mentioned, there are no mistakes on his tape, like just egregious misses. Like I think Keely Ringo might have the highest upside in the class if you're talking about like physical profile, but he's got a lot of bad reps against, top-notch receivers. You're talking about Cedric Tillman, who's like a top 50 pick. You're talking about, Marvin Harrison, who's probably the best receiver prospect of the last, 10 years. But there's a lot of bad there, and with Darius Rush, you just don't see that. So, he's very sound. He's very low-key, but I think there's just a lot to like there in terms of his potential upside. So for me, he's number 7, just like he is for you.
Yeah, there was one play, I can't remember which game it was, but there was he had to chase a receiver going down like the other way. Like it was a gadget play or something. And
it was against Kentucky. Yeah.
Took it like 50 yards that way. Then he followed him that way. Then went all the way down this way. And like, who could get to that guy first? And that was him running the full 100 yards, like stuff like that. I love that sort of stuff. You're looking for the coverage stuff. You're looking for the basic, like the stuff you're supposed to grade. I don't grade heart by any means, but like tackling, is part of it, and stuff like that really stands out to me. He moves really, really well, like you said, baiting guys into poor throws, or making like receivers seem like they're open or something, and then being able to move up and bait them was so impressive, both in the the good coverage reps that he has, and even some of the poor ones where the receiver might beat him off the line for some reason or beat him on a slant, but his recovery is so good that by the time the quarterback is throwing and getting the ball to him, he's almost jumped in front of that quarterback or in front of the receiver to break up plays. So I really, really do like Rush quite a bit. And while you were talking, and honestly, I think I have this off. I think I'm going to change it up even just when you were talking and thinking about it more. I'm going to put Rush at 6 for me.
All right.
Flip my other guy, Julius Brents, to number 7. Not that that means a whole lot because it's just one spot in a ranking and their grades are very similar. But thinking between the two, Brent is the quote unquote upside guy, I think, and his athletic testing definitely shows that. Like if you're trying to go for someone, go for the guy who tested through the roof. But not that I dislike Brent or for any reason. He did nothing to drop in my rankings, but I think just thinking about like looking over my notes for Rush and hearing you talk about him, I realize how not like perfect he is, but he's so darn good at everything that I think, I'm going to move him up. So Rush is going to be my number 6.
Yeah. Brent's is, let me make sure I have this right. Obviously I have Brent's at number 8. So I'm a little lower on him there. Again, there are some mistakes. Again, it's against Alabama. Like that shit happens. Like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But Brent's is kind of like if you miss out on Joey Porter in the first round, like he's so long and lanky and fast and he doesn't have the same kind of production as Joey Porter Jr. and we'll get to him in a second, I'm sure. But there's a lot to like about Brent. I know Alex Insdorf, had him going to the Chargers in the second round. So, there's a lot to like with Brent, in terms of his physicality, in terms of his, projection as a press man corner. I think it just kind of depends. Like when you're weighing these cornerbacks, I think for me, like if there's a similarly paired group of players, in this case, I had Ringo, Brent, and Darius Rush all graded pretty similarly.
Yeah.
But it's like, you have to pencil Keely Ringo into a very specific scheme. And I think you have to do that a little less with Julius Brents, but still, like ideally you're talking about him being, heavy on the press man. Whereas Darius Rush, I think, can do a bunch of everything. I think he can play zone. I think he can play mixed match. I think he can play as a press man cover corner. I think he can play as a cover 2, Tampa 2 kind of corner. I just think there's a little bit more versatility there in terms of the types of coverage he can play. So that's how I've kind of learned to break ties at the cornerback position is like, okay, what can you do and how many different roles can you play? Because Keely Ringo, like if he goes to, a Gus Bradley kind of scheme, like if the Chargers still had Bradley, he'd be a perfect fit because he's a cover 3 kind of corner, like just, that kind of stereotype. Like I mentioned this on Twitter, he kind of gave me some, San Francisco Richard Sherman vibes, that's who he is. Like that's the kind of ideal scheme fit for him. But Darius Rush, like I said, I think he can just go anywhere and play anything. So that's just kind of how I broke that tie in particular.
Yeah, nice. I respect that. So thank you for talking about it because now I've switched up my rankings. But not because they had a suspension or a broken foot or something.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, why don't you finish off the 5 and number 4?
Okay, so at number 5, I have Emmanuel Forbes. Nope, okay. I don't know why. I've always been putting a T after his name, and I don't know why because I'm not that dumb. I know how to spell Forbes, and yet I keep putting Forbest. I don't know why. And I spell Mississippi. I got it. Mississippi State. There we go.
Did you have to say it in your head? You're like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. MISSISSIPPI. Absolutely. You're in education.
Yep. 100%.
At number 4 for me, Deontay Banks. Again, I hate putting Banks at number 4. What kind of cruel world is this? Where I know someone with a first round grade at number 4 for me. But I will do that. So you can sort of guess who my 3, 2, 1 is in some order. I get Forbes as a skinny guy. We'll get that out of the way. He's $166. That doesn't mean that he can't go somewhere and fatten up, perhaps. I don't know. But $166 is certainly an outlier. But it's not like he's really short and skinny. Like I don't really see why he couldn't put on more mass or why he even didn't for that matter. But someone will get a good cooking going and get him all fed up and caught up. But he's still 6 foot, almost 6'1", 32 inch, I think 32.25 inch arms or whatever. So there's still plenty of physical traits to work with. He's just skinny. But for the second year in a row, I have a corner from Mississippi State with a second round grade. I do like Forbes more than Emerson. I liked Emerson a lot. But he's another player that's really good at everything. Like, a lot of these guys on this list are good at a lot of things. I always, sometimes watching corners, like, up there's a zone corner, up there's a zone corner, up there's a zone corner, and that's kind of it. Or like, oh, he struggles in man, that's it. Like with Forbes, I can see him playing zone, man, like in the slot. He's got good instincts to play the run. He's a player that I saw them put him on an island at different points and just let him do different things, mix up his coverages. When Texas A&M started to throw at him, they fell behind. Texas A&M fell behind, and he returned the favor with a pick six, and then just an absolute truck stick on a wide receiver. Like, that's how good he is. Like, he wasn't tested as much, I think, in the games that I watched. But as soon as they kind of had to, it was, okay, here's a pick six, here's a truck stick hit. Like, that's what you get for trying to go after me. So I genuinely think he could be like a top 3-4 corner in most classes. I really do. I like him. I really like his versatility. Forbes, I don't want to say Forbes and Rush are kind of similar, but in the sense that I do like their versatility, I do have them very similarly. So Forbes number 5 for me.
Yeah, when I heard about this 165-pound corner that was like shooting up draft boards, I'm like, okay, but he's 165 pounds. Like, there's got to be some bad run defense tape on here, right? Like, he's just so little. And teams would go at him. Teams would test him with tunnel screens and jet sweeps and every single kind of run that is targeted at corners. And he was up for the challenge, man. I think very similarly to Travius Hodges Tomlinson.
Yeah,
their size isn't an indictment for them. Like, they're able to go out and be physical and play at the point of attack as cornerbacks and be able to seal off that edge. So Emmanuel Forbes has a ton of ball production to his name. I think he's got I forget the exact number. I want to say it was like 14 interceptions over the last 3 years. And this, I don't know if you have that up, but
I don't have it in front of me now.
Just a ton of ball production. So yeah, he probably needs to add some weight, right? But like you're talking about, it's not like he's skinny and a bad athlete. It's not like he's skinny and short. Like, he's 70th percentile in height. He's 92nd percentile in wingspan, 78th in arm length. And he ran a 4.35. Like, he's incredibly fast. He jumped 37.5 inches in the vertical jump. Like, he's skinny, but he's a great athlete. Like, he's a premium athlete at the position. And that wingspan, I think, really shows up on tape as well. So I think that it's a concern that he's 165 pounds. Don't get me wrong. Like, sure. I question how durable he can be, but it's not like, I have to bump him down, several spots because he's, 30 pounds lighter than Julius Brents or whatever the case is, 40 pounds, I guess, probably. But I think that the tape is fantastic, man. And the ball production really stands out. His run defense ability stands out too. So I have him at number, let me make sure. Yeah, I'm at number 6, which is, like you said, it's just crazy how stacked this class is. I'm just going to put Mississippi State like that. And then number 5 for me, I have Brian Branch from Alabama. And I understand like why you would want to have him at safety. And then I have number 4 for me is Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State.
Cool.
So we've talked a lot about Branch already. I think he's an elite slot defender from day one as an NFL starter. Looks like Everett O'Neal said 14 picks, 17 pass breakups. Like, yeah, for Emmanuel Forbes, like that's elite ball production, man. Like, that's hard to come by.
Yeah.
So Joey Porter Jr., I think in terms of a very specific style, he's the best press man corner in this class. Like, I think his ability to use his length and direct receivers really stands out. Like, I talked about Mozzie Smith when we did the defensive line rankings. Like, just his grip strength and his ability to dictate terms was so far and away the best in that class and for defensive tackles. And it's the same kind of thing for Joey Porter Jr. Like, his ability to dictate terms at the point of attack is so good. I'm a tad concerned about the penalties. In the NFL, he's not going to be able to be as physical as he was in college. There's different rules. You have to get out of press much faster. You have to bail. And I just kind of question, and it's very nitpicky. I have a first-round grade on him. He's my number 4 corner. But I just kind of question, what is he able to do after the press coverage? When he has to bail, like, what does that really look like in the NFL? And I think it'll be really good, but it's just some minor question marks that I think he'll have to clean up. I think he'll get there. Like I said, I have a first-round grade on him.
Yeah.
But when comparing him with the other three who are coming after this, I just think there's some things that need to be cleaned up more so than the other guys.
Yeah, I would agree. Compared to the, well, okay, so he'll be my third, but compared to the two corners I have ahead of him, a little bit less fluid. I think he's a bit like a tick behind in terms of coverage, change of direction at several points, but I mean, the 34-inch arms are the 34-inch arms, and his ability,
crazy length, man.
It's insane. And his ability, like, I can't even consider some of these guys with 33-inch arms to have long arms because he's got 34-inch arms. And it actually really stands out to me in the run game. Like, he's able to make first meaningful contact, playing the run and shedding defenders underneath. Of course, like in press man, he's throwing off the timing of the offense. There's so many moments where I'll watch him play or the offense try to go, and the college quarterback running a system, throws to a spot where the receiver is going to be, and he's not there several times because he's been disrupted off the timing. I think that really, really stands out to me. As far as the, after you press, what happens with the coverage, down the field or whatever, that is definitely a concern. But I also think that there's part of his physical profile that just makes up for some of those mistakes. If I'm 100%. Trying to watch, like, I forget which game it was, but there were several moments where the quarterback was trying to throw it, like drop it into a bucket over Joey Porter Jr. And maybe you could, but it's so low percentage because the athleticism to get there is already there. He's already pressed him and maybe thrown off some timing. And then if you do happen to throw it perfectly, the guy's got 34-inch arms to just throw his hand up in the air and knock it down. So it does make things very difficult. So, I think if he didn't maybe have those physical traits, if he were, let's say, a shorter corner or something, like, he would be lower on the list. But he just has a different kind of frame, a different physical profile that allows him to make up for some of those mistakes.
100%. His recoverability because of his length is top notch as well. So first in the class in forced completion percentage as well. We should definitely highlight that. I would like to see him come down with some more interceptions. Solo Man in the chat says he has butterfingers. I wouldn't go that far, but I would like to see more ball production. I think he'll get there in the NFL. So very high quality player for sure. So obviously you have Porter at 3. How do you have Christian Gonzalez and Devon Witherspoon sorted out?
All right, so let me just add that to the list. I have them graded the exact same. Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez are two of my 3 players on my big board on the top 3. They're 2 and 3.
That's so good, man.
That's how good I think these guys are. So I literally put it down to the statistics, and it came down to Devon Witherspoon at number 1 for me. I do not care. I will put, if Gonzalez is number 1, awesome. I totally get it, because I'm trying to pick between these two similarly graded players was literally impossible, that I had to make the coin flip be the numbers, and that was it. Like, that's all I could do. So for me, and Christian Gonzalez is also, I think, probably the better ceiling player, and he's not even 21 yet. So I get it. It should be there should be no 2 and 1 for me. It should be, for me, like 1A, 1B. But, and also I have no idea where Illinois keeps finding these defensive backs, but they're insane. Oh wait, I just put him number 2. See, that's how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Christian Gonzalez. Nope, you can do it, Tyler. There we go. Christian Gonzalez. Z-A-L-E. Nope, easy. People actually have to watch this. I'm so sorry. Okay, Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, Devon Witherspoon from Illinois. I think I know who your corner one is. So I'll let you talk about him. So I'll talk about the other guy. I'm pretty sure it hasn't changed. So for me, Witherspoon, dynamic playmaking corner who can affect the game of football in all areas. On the out, like, he, for Illinois, lined up everywhere you needed him to. On the outside, he's controlling the boundary. He's decisive. He's got exceptional ball skills and production. When he's tasked with stopping the run, I don't think he's the most, like, sure tackler, but he brings it, and he brings the hammer in the run game. That's very evident. He wants to be a part of the run game. Sometimes the tackling style can lead to misses, but also more often than not, it's him just making for a play for a gain of 1, a loss 0, a loss or something. Excellent there from the slot. He dominates against slot players, and whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a tight end. He's so quick to trigger. Again, the ball production is really, really awesome. So quick to trigger in those moments, get his arm in front of the receiver, break up a pass. He's got 14 pass breakups and 3 picks on the season, 20 passes broken up the last 2 years, just 1 touchdown allowed. And again, between him and Gonzalez, it really just came down to which one has been, at least in college, the more pain in the ass to throw against. And on the season, he's allowed, fewer than 20 yards 9 times, only one game going over 32 yards the entire season, 206 yards allowed. And that's it. Like that is the production that he had, the numbers that he had. I'm not saying they're the same player, but it's kind of what Sauce Gardner did in college his final season. Like the numbers just like, that's it. Nobody threw on him. There was nothing you could do. There was no numbers to say that this team or player ever really dominated Sauce Gardner. They didn't. And I kind of feel that same with him. So 22 catches on 62 targets. The ball production's there. The athleticism is there. The film is there. The flexibility is there. I loved watching him. I love watching Christian Gonzalez. Gonzalez was like, I couldn't believe it when I was watching him, how talented he was, how good he is. So I'll let you talk about him, but both of these guys are just so darn good. I really loved watching both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go wrong. This is very much like a Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater debate situation, where it's like, okay, like who maybe has the longer arms, who maybe is kind of the more powerful player. Like you have to kind of nitpick a little bit here and then to try and like break this tie up. And yeah, I think your process was sound. I mean, Devon Witherspoon, like on the stat sheet, looks fantastic, and Christian Gonzalez hasn't hit that point just yet in his career. So Witherspoon, there's a ton to like, man. He's a better athlete and he's bigger, but he gave me like Tyrann Mathieu vibes. Just like I'm just gonna be a pain in the ass. I'm just gonna be around the football. Like you're not gonna be able to throw on me. Like he's a super fun player to watch. The penalties are a tad concerning, and again, similar to Joey Porter Jr., he's not going to be able to play as physical in the NFL as he is or as physical as he did in college. So he'll have to adjust, but I think that's he'll do that for sure. So yeah, at number 3 for me, I have Deonte Banks from Maryland. I think his teammate, I didn't necessarily grade yet. Jacorian Bennett, also a fantastic player. So interested to dive into him after this, but yeah, Devon Witherspoon from Illinois, number 2, and then Christian Gonzalez at number 1. So yeah, in terms of Christian Gonzalez, I think his statistical profile is certainly not the best, but just from a sheer athleticism standpoint, just size, height, weight, speed, all really, really good. 89th percentile height. He's got 70th percentile wingspan, 70th percentile arm length. So it's not necessarily, a super lanky player, but I mean, he ran a 4.38, which is 89th percentile, a 41.5-inch vertical, 96th percentile, 133 inches in the broad jump, 95th percentile. So you're talking about like a truly premium athlete at the position.
Yeah.
And the thing that really, for me, kind of separates him from the other height, weight, speed guys in this class is his ability to change directions and how many different kind of coverages and profiles he can cover. And so you watch him against Utah, for example, they matched him up with Dalton Kincaid. And, they understood that that's where Utah's bread was buttered, and they made the right decision because Utah's receivers were trash. But then you go watch him against, Georgia, and he's exclusively on, I forget his name. He's a younger player, but he's exclusively, one-on-one against their ex receiver. And I think he can truly be a cornerback who you can build your coverage around. He can be a Jalen Ramsey type. He can be a Sauce Gardner type, who you talked about for Devon Witherspoon. But
yeah,
in terms of, hey, this guy's just going to shut off this side of the field, and we're able to, change the math over here. Like that's who Christian Gonzalez can be. And the ball production is not there. I think some of that is just teams not being willing to test him. I wish we had seen him play, against better competition for sure in terms of like receivers. We didn't get to see him against Ohio State. We didn't get to see him against Michigan. We didn't get to see him against some of these other teams who have, elite receivers like we did with Devon Witherspoon in the Big Ten and Joey Porter. So I do think there is some of that baked into the lack of numbers for him. He just didn't get thrown at a whole lot. But in terms of his ability as an athlete, like it's just so good. And he was, I believe, a state champion long jumper in Texas, which is just like, okay, like what kind of elite athletes are coming out of Texas? So there's his sister ran in the Olympics for Columbia. Like there's just
Oh, wow.
elite athletic. This is all information coming from the Beast from Dane Brugler, by the way. It's fantastic work there. So just like athletic profile is off the charts. I think his ability to be a smooth operator and just like be the same low key player on a down to down basis really kind of reminded me of Patrick Surtain. Like he just knew like he was the best player out there, and it didn't matter who he was going up against. You want me to guard a tight end? I'll do it. You want me to guard a Jordan Addison type? I'll do that. You want me to guard a 6'3", X receiver? I'll do that too. So I think just the versatility that he brings to the table and the athletic profile was so good. So my hot take, I guess, if you will, he's my number one player in this class ahead of Will Anderson and Bijan
Oh,
Robinson.
really?
Really.
Wow.
And Devon Witherspoon is not far behind. I have Devon Witherspoon at number 5 overall. So both of these players are fantastic. I love both of these corners. And this class in general, man, like we keep saying, it's an elite class for a reason.
Yeah, calling Gonzalez a smooth operator is, I actually think, the perfect way to describe it. I think Witherspoon, I wouldn't call him a smooth operator. I'd almost call him kind of a freaky, fanatic, not frenetic, wild sort of player, but like just kind of like a more like, I don't know, Wolverine kind of player or something. Gonzalez being that perfect, like shut down one side of the field, smooth operator. That's perfect. But the dude can tackle.
Yeah.
Part of it, I mean, literally the missed tackle rate's fantastic, which was such a sigh of relief. I watched him first after watching the safety group, which is not great with tackling. And just to see him with that profile, I mean, the dude's in love with tackling. It's just like he wants to be in on these plays. A lot of guys in this class, I really feel like they are just like that. Yeah, smooth operator, excellent player. I don't have his number 1, but I have him as number 3, so that's not bad. And then Witherspoon number 2. I still Will Anderson number 1. Spoiler. I doubt that changes, but I mean these corners, man. Like if I just want to go through the list, like Witherspoon's 2, Gonzalez is 3, Porter is 5, Banks is 14. Like it's just 4 corners in the top 15 is ridiculous. So good. And again, 10 of them at least in the top 52 for me. Beautiful class.
Yeah, same here. So this group, man, I couldn't stop watching. Like I got to 15 and I was like, I probably should start watching a little bit more of the offensive tackles, but it just kept reeling me in. So interesting question I wanted to address from Zeus Era here. He wants to know where we would have, Derek Stingley, JC Horn coming out of this class. And you can highlight too, if you want, like Sauce or Surtain or whoever you want. But in terms of like where Gonzalez and Witherspoon in particular kind of stand out for you, how would you maybe have kind of the last few years grouped together, if you would?
Some of it's revisionist because I feel like the last 2 years which is funny because I have Witherspoon first, with having Horn over Surtain, and Horn had an excellent year last year and was having a good rookie year. He just got hurt. And then with having Stingley over Sauce, it was like, okay, there's a player that's really, really freaking good. But what if you could get a gooder player in the other guy that I really, really like too, because of the ball skills and because maybe they can bring a bit more. So
sure, like
the way I would rank Stingley now is different than I would have ranked him last year, where I had Stingley number 1. But if I had to like retroactively go back and because of the way I've sort of considered how I've graded, like I do firmly believe Witherspoon and Gonzalez are pretty equal here. I'd probably have Stingley 3rd, which means if I had to not change my grading, Sauce Gardner would be 4th. But I see, like, looking into it now, if I had to just blindly grade these players based on how I would do things now, it would probably be Stingley at 4, Stingley at 5, Surtain at like 4 or 5 or something. So it's tough to say because you're looking, like, the way I felt about those players so different than now. But I really say that Witherspoon is the number 1 player for me ranked out of those guys, I guess, like based on the way I've graded them and the way that I graded them at the time. Yeah, I think it'd be Witherspoon and then a toss between, I don't know, Gonzalez and Surtain and those guys. But it's also close. Like I would probably have to stack those guys up numbers wise and really look at the athleticism and really look at the numbers and really look at the competition. And part of that was the case for Sauce Gardner. Is like, is it the stuff versus competition all there? Is he as aggressive in the run game? As it turns out, run game or not, he's just an excellent coverage corner. So I feel like I overthought that.
Yeah, I mean, Sauce, I had probably the best rookie cornerback season in NFL history. So, yeah, I think I was probably guilty of that too. In terms of like pure prospect grades, I would still have Gonzalez and Witherspoon as 1 and 2. JC Horn was my corner 1 in that class, and he's been a really freaking good corner in the NFL too. So I would have him ahead of Banks and Porter for sure.
I would.
Stingley, I probably would put behind Banks because Stingley had all the injury concerns. There was it was not really a talent thing. It was just like, you know, what does he really look like at this point in time? Because he hadn't really played. And, you know, his best college football was, you know, 2 years previous when he was a freshman. So,
yeah,
you know, Stingley versus Porter Jr. would be an interesting debate. Obviously, Porter Jr. a little bit older, but more physical. So, in terms of Surtain, I would have Surtain behind Witherspoon as well. You know, him and JC Horn were so close for me in that class. You know, Surtain would be ahead of Banks, but behind Witherspoon too. So Christian Gonzalez is the highest corner grade I've given, and Devon Witherspoon is second. So these two are just top notch, truly cornerbacks in my opinion.
Yeah, they are. I when I have to go look, I changed my grading scale to a 10-point grading scale, so it's tough to say like exactly how the numbers would stack up. But yeah, they're really good. So like the way some of these top corners have transitioned, like if any team who gets them, it seems like the Falcons are in on or not the Falcons, the Lions are in on a corner. They're gonna have a lot of fun. Like if they go find Gonzalez, and then I think you suggest like taking Brian Branch again later as another person out of their secondary. Like they're gonna be amazing. 2 second-round picks as well. They could go find another one of these corners that are really good. They're gonna be fun this year.
Yeah, this is interesting because like I just wanted to do like a full, you know, 1 through 32 mock the other day, just like to see how I would kind of stack these players up. And, you know, it was like, okay, like what would I do? And, you know, I got to number 4 with the Colts and it's like, would I rather take Christian Gonzalez or I want to take Will Levis? You know what I mean? Like, there's just some things out there that I'm like, okay, like, how do I want to do this? And, you know, I think it's a real thing for these NFL teams who have to figure out like, okay, like, where are we at as a franchise? Like, who should we really, you know, target in this kind of situation?
Yeah.
And this cornerback class is so good. Like, to me, if you have like a needed position and it's like, okay, but I also might need a corner, it's like I almost might just default to corner because I just think like this group is that special.
Yeah, and the safety group had maybe 2 guys who were really athletic and both were at Illinois somehow. But this corner group, like, how many of your 15 corners were super athletes? Probably like 12 of them. Yeah. And the guys that aren't are just because they're 5'9", and that's it. Like, but they still run a 4.26 like DJ Turner.
Yeah.
I mean, you just feel so good about this class because even if the film wasn't perfect and they're a second round grade or whatever, they're still freaking athletic and you can make that work.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk a ton about Deontay Banks, for example, but Banks is, let me make sure I get this right on. So Banks, he ran a 4.35, which is 92nd percentile. He jumped 42 inches in the vertical, 97th percentile, 136 inches in the broad jump, 98th percentile. He's 6 foot. He's 197 pounds. Like his length, his lack of length, I think is something to be a little concerned about. But I mean, this dude, in terms of physical testing, like 89th percentile, 10-yard split, like the athleticism in this class is crazy, man. And I think like that's part of the reason why I can't really talk about Clark Phillips is like, I love him. Like the ball production is so good in terms of interceptions and his instincts, but it's like he's 5'9" and he ran a 4.5. Like comparing these guys it's just different. So you know, and it's the same thing with Travius Hodges Tomlinson. Like I think Travius has you know, he has some really fun tape, but it's like he's 5'7", like he's even shorter than Clark Phillips. So it's just, you know, you get to a certain point where it's like, you know, how do you differentiate these guys? Like Mekhi Blackman from USC, he's like second in the composite rankings, but he ran like a 4.55. Like he's just not a great athlete. So this class is just loaded, man.
Yeah, it is. It's. I just turned on a simulation right now to see where these corners go, and I mean, if you look at the Chargers in the second round, they're staring at. Let's see. I mean, Smith, Forbes, Ringo, Brents, Turner. I mean, Phillips if you want. I don't know, man. I know Chargers fans want one thing. I think you're going to be surprised when they take a defensive back early.
Yep, we know how much Brandon Staley likes defensive back, so would definitely not be surprised there. All right, Tyler, any other final thoughts before we head out for tonight?
No, thank you everyone for watching this one. I know in a sense it's really not a need for the Chargers because in terms of the sheet, like they have players there and they have a player that like in Jaw Taylor and they could sign Bryce Callahan back. At the same time, it's a heck of a class. So thank you guys for watching and really kind of getting into these corners and watching them with us. I didn't expect over 100 people for a corner episode. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The offensive lineman episodes we did were definitely not as packed. So, I get it. It's appreciated. So this is a really fun group, man. Hopefully we can, get some people on board with taking a cornerback early in this draft because the group is just special. So we're less than 2 weeks from the draft. We got one more offensive tackle ranking episode to get to this week. We go from the freaky athletes who are 190 pounds to the 320 pound guys. I love the transition. So we'll have offensive tackles later this week. And then that's it for us. So no more watching college tape, which I cannot wait for because I'm so sick of watching college offenses and defenses. But this, we're going to have a fun weekend planned for you guys as well. And then next week for the draft is going to be a lot of fun too. So as always, make sure you like the video, comment, subscribe. If you are listening, make sure and leave a rating review. We always appreciate that as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.